Eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two, one. Foundations of Education. Philosophical Foundations of Education. Let me present to you the overview of the philosophical movements that have helped in shaping Philippine education. Education in the Philippines has undergone several stages of development from the pre-Spanish times to the present. In meeting the needs of the society, education serves as focus of emphasis or priorities of the leadership at certain periods in our national struggle as a race. In pre-colonial period, education was informal, unstructured, and devoid of methods. Children were provided more vocational training and less academics by their parents and in the houses of tribal tutors. In pre-Spanish period, system of education underwent major changes during the Spanish colonization. The tribal tutors were replaced by the Spanish missionaries. Education was religion-oriented. It was for the elite, especially in the early years of Spanish colonization. Access to education by the Filipinos was later liberalized through the enactment of the Educational Decree of 1863, which provided for the establishment of at least one primary school for boys and girls in each town under the responsibility of the municipal government, and the establishment of a normal school for male teachers under the supervision of the Jesuits. Primary instruction was free and the teaching of Spanish was compulsory. Education during that period was inadequate, suppressed, and controlled. The defeat of Spain by American forces paved the way for Aguinaldo's republic under a revolutionary government. The schools maintained by Spain for more than 3 centuries were closed for the time being but were reopened on August 29, 1898 by the Secretary of Interior. The Burgos Institute in Malolos, the Military Academy of Malolos, and the Literary University of the Philippines were established. A system of free and compulsory elementary education was established by the Malolos Constitution. An adequate, secularized, and free public school system during the first decade of American rule was established upon the recommendation of the Squirman Commission. Free primary instruction that trained the people for the duties of citizenship and advocation was enforced by the Taft Commission for instruction of President McKinley. Chaplains and uncommissioned officers were assigned to teach using English as the medium of instruction. In American period, the Americans were keen to open up 7 schools with Army servicemen teaching with Army command and selected books and supplies. In 1899, more schools were opened this time. A highly centralized experimental public school system was installed in 1901 by the Philippine Commission and legislated by Act No. 74. The law exposes a great shortage of qualified teachers brought about by large enrollment numbers in school. As a result, Philippine Commission authorized the Secretary of Public Instruction to bring 600 teachers from the United States of America who were called the Thomasites to the Philippines between 1901 and 1902. The high school system supported by provincial governments, special educational institutions, School of Arts and Trades, an agricultural school, and commerce and marine institutes were established in 1902 by the Philippine Commission. In 1908, the Philippine Legislature approved Act No. 1870, which created the University of the Philippines. The Reorganization Act of 1916 provided the Philippinization of all department secretaries except the Secretary of Public Instruction. In 1942, Japanese educational policies were embodied in Military Order No. 2. The Philippine Executive Commission established the Commission of Education, Health, and Public Welfare, and schools were reopened in June 1942. On October 14, 1943, the Japanese-sponsored republic created the Ministry of Education. Under the Japanese regime, the teaching of Tagalog, Philippine history, and character education was reserved for Filipinos. Love for work and dignity of labor was emphasized. On February 27, 1945, the Department of Instruction was made part of the Department of Public Instruction. In 1947, by virtue of Executive Order No. 94, the Department of Instruction was changed to Department of Education. During this period, the regulation and supervision of public and private schools belonged to the Bureau of Public and Private Schools. In 1972, the Department of Education became the Department of Education and Culture or DEX under Proclamation 1081, which was signed by President Ferdinand Marcos. The 1973 Constitution set out the three fundamental aims of education in the Philippines: to foster love of country, to teach the duties of citizenship, and to develop moral character with self-discipline and scientific, technological, and vocational efficiency. In 1978, by the Presidential Decree No. 1397, DEX became the Ministry of Education and Culture. The Educational Act of 1982 provided for an integrated system of education covering both formal and non-formal education at all levels. The Education Act of 1982 created the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports, which later became the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports in 1987 by virtue of Executive Order No. 117. The structure of DEX as embodied in Executive Order No. 117 has practically remained unchanged until 1994 when the Commission on Higher Education or CHED, and 1995 when the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority or TESDA were established to supervise tertiary degree programs and non-degree technical vocational programs respectively. In August 2001, Republic Act No. 9155, otherwise called the Governance of Basic Education Act, was passed, transforming the name of the Department of Education, Culture and Sports or DEX to the Department of Education or DepEd, and redefining the role of field offices. The Act provides the overall framework for school head empowerment by strengthening their leadership roles and school-based management within the context of transparency and local accountability. The goal of basic education is to provide the school-age population and young adults with skills, knowledge, and values to become caring, self-reliant, productive, and patriotic citizens. In 2010, then Senator Benigno Aquino III expressed his desire to implement the K-12 basic education cycle to increase the number of years of compulsory education to 13 years. After further consultation and studies, the government under President Aquino formally adopted the K-6-4 basic education system, 1 year of kindergarten, 6 years of elementary education, 4 years of junior high school education, and 2 years of senior high school education. Now, let's talk about changing philosophical orientation and education from major philosophical thoughts to modern philosophical thoughts. For major philosophical thoughts, we have idealism, realism, and pragmatism. These major philosophical thoughts were also even present during the pre-colonial period, where realism and idealism were present in the tell me show me method of teaching, such as learning how to hunt for food, which is their practical way of living. Idealism. What is in the mind is the only reality or ideal, possible to live according to the very high standards of behavior and honesty. Realism. What is real is actual, must be demonstrated. Pragmatism. What is useful or practical is true, dealing with specific situations instead of on ideas and theories. Now, let's go to the modern philosophical thoughts, which are the following: essentialism, progressivism, perennialism, existentialism, and social reconstructivism. These modern philosophical thoughts are the reason for how and why the present educational system works. It is also a great representation of the changing philosophies and ideas from pre-colonial period to the present, and this is how it is defined. Essentialism. Go back to the basic or 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Progressivism. Change and growth, students' need and interest, learning by doing and hands-on. Perennialism. Eternal, ageless, traditional or unchanging. Existentialism. Man's free will, freedom, autonomy, and choice. Social reconstructionism. Social development, social reform, and social changes. Now, let's have a short overview of the comparison and attributes of educational philosophies. As you can see, the table is divided into categories whether each philosophical or theoretical orientation is considered to be traditional or contemporary. Traditional, which is in this case, refers to the back to basics, centers on the historically used and accepted customs that are familiar to most of the philosophers and educators. Contemporary philosophy refers to the current era of philosophy, generally dealing with philosophers from the late 19th century through to the 21st. So, take a quick look about their comparisons and how each philosophical orientation matters and related to our educational system. To summarize the changing philosophical orientation in education, I will leave to you this beautiful quote from Heraclitus that is, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and it's not the same man." In conclusion, our philosophical education is a dynamic and time-tested. Its dynamism has shown how curricular reforms and fallacies structured in our educational system to be altered our society. It is a strong example of illustration of a boat sailing in a body of changes and challenges. It is passed through various stages of development and undergone dramatic changes shown in the various periods of educational evolution. Its long years of exposures with the Spaniards, Americans, and Japanese have created a big spectrum of philosophical education variation and great opportunities to our children's generation. Indeed, continuous learning and education are still the greatest investment that we can give to ourselves and to our country's success. I am JJP Color and I am MA Mathematics Education student. Thank you for watching.